tendencies. And so let me see if I can get this in the right format here. Can you still hear me? Because look like everything. Can you
Yep.
hear me? Okay, awesome.
Yep.
Let's see if I can move this out of the way prayerfully. Yeah. All right. And so, again, the topic that we're going to be dealing with tonight is dealing with anxiety and how to look at to see how it operates in our life and how we deal with it. I'm sure all have experienced levels of anxiety in our life, and so again, this class, the supporting text that has been given to us is Acts 12 and 7, uh, where it was talking about where the angel led Peter out of the cell, waking him up, telling him to quickly get up and to begin to move out of a place of imprisonment to a place of freedom. So the class goal for this particular Unbound teaching is for us to learn how to quickly get up and move and free ourselves from challenging and toxic relationships as we do that through looking at establishing healthy boundaries. And so, as we were given a test early on, I think at the beginning of this class, I fell. My test score for boundaries fell within the limited category, where I tend to merge I guess my boundaries with other people's boundaries, which kind of it bleeds over into their areas, which kind of opens me up and opens others up that fall into this particular category where we're influenced by other people's behaviors and perceptions of what they're trying to achieve or trying to gain. And so, again, this will help us to see how anxiety affects us and how we can make it as a game changer in setting up our boundaries. And so, a question at the beginning, open discussion. Do you feel anxiety when setting boundaries? As we've been working on that and working through that, want to get your feedback and how do you feel when we did this last exercise that Pastors has given us, assignment that she's given us? How did you feel about the about setting those boundaries or identifying what your needs are, what you value, and share why you felt that way? So I'll open up the floor if anyone would like to share a few moments on that. Anyone?
Yeah, I have really struggled to set boundaries because I would be fearful of the retaliation for some specific people in my life. So when I would set boundaries, there would be such retaliation. It really created some anxiety and fear in me to when I set boundaries. And so I kind of grasped more toward not having boundaries to not have that retaliation from people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good. Anyone else? For me, since I'm not seeing anyone coming off mute, in this particular assignment, I felt uh, or even in my personal time before the class even started, I was working on boundaries, setting boundaries within my life. And so anxiety do tend to come up. And one of the things that I feel is not knowing the anxiety comes, I believe comes because I'm not sure what the outcome is going to be, depending on the person that I'm dealing with and just not knowing what their responses are going to be and then how to remain firm and be able to handle that. And so all of that just kind of created a lot of turmoil within me and just really just making you uneasy and saying, okay, how am I going to handle that? What's going to be the approach and whatnot. So that's been my experience. Anyone
One of
else before we
one,
move on?
yeah, one of the things I was talking with Paige about was once she sets her boundaries and she's at a particular place, she started getting anxious and saying, oh, this doesn't make sense because if we don't know where they are, then how is this relationship going to work? And so I said, well, you're doing a boundary violation because you might think that this person is a six and they might think that they're a two, that you're a two. And so you're making assumptions on them that you can't make. And so for her, she started getting anxious about the whole process because she's
Mhm.
like, well, I might as well not be in a relationship then. I said, well, that's not quite where it is. That's why we're working on this so that we can understand what's ours and what's not ours. And so the anxiety from the unknown, the fear from changing and doing something that we haven't done before, the just the whole thing of the responsibility and the hardness. This is a hard conversation we don't if we haven't set boundaries, if our boundary has been closing people off and walking away and shutting down, that's not healthy. And so that causes anxiety. So that's what
Yeah,
I want to share from the conversation I had with Paige today.
yeah, yeah. Thank you. All right. So thank you for that feedback. And so here's some examples, which we've probably seen and experienced ourselves or even heard. Anxiety shows up in setting boundaries due to fear of conflict, fear of abandonment or rejection, fear of unpredictable reactions, from others, feeling guilty, based upon, whatever conversation that will be had concerning that boundary with the other person that you're dealing with, and that you know that you probably will, take on that guilt when it really may not necessarily belong to you or not.
Can I
So,
share something?
sure, Alyssa.
So, with all this whole lesson, I have a friend. She's been struggling. So, if we can all pray for her, she's been struggling with her faith because God throws all kinds of challenges at her. And I've tried to explain to her, God only gives the strongest people challenges, but she doesn't see that. But, anyways, one thing she has been doing a lot is coming to me and then complaining to me about who she's having struggles with, who she's having issues with. And also, she likes to tell inappropriate jokes, dirty jokes, and stuff like that. She knows very well what my faith is. But this whole boundary thing has really got me thinking that I need to tell her, and I'm going to tell her next time she comes over, I have boundaries and that there is no complaining in my house and there is no telling inappropriate and dirty jokes in my house. And if she can't respect that, then she can't come over, but I will still love her.
Well, that's
Amen.
awesome. That's
It
awesome.
is. A way to
One,
take a stand.
for sure. One of the things that really is kind of, if you don't notice, number three, fear of unpredictable reactions from others. That's actually a boundary violation. That fear, you're stepping over and thinking about their reaction, which isn't in your control.
Hmm.
You can say the most loving things and people can punch you in the face. Fear, that's like fearing that unknown and fearing people's reaction. You can only present things as best you can. Fear is really based on the results from the other person and what you'll lose in that. And so just be mindful. Sometimes our fears are unfounded. We think the worst, but remember, fears that are in your control are good, but fears that are out your control is a boundary violation, is the only thing I wanted to say here.
I did the homework. I just didn't send the homework. And that was one of my things that I had on my list for my I don't control. I said I don't control their feelings or responses to my openness and honesty. So that's
Mhm.
good to hear that I did that part right, at least.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, if you send it, Manda, I will put it in the form because we'll have it at the end of the time and I can give you your feedback.
Okay.
And so anxieties, this is just a definition, which just to have in front of us is a feeling of worry, nervousness, uneasiness about something. Again, that's again what we're talking about that we can't control, an uncertain outcome that's outside of our control. Symptoms of anxiety is nervousness, restless, um, tense, a sense of danger and panic. Um, it's rapid heartbeat. I got beady there, but be rapid heartbeat, hyperventilating, experienced those things before, sweating, trembling, tired, and weak. All of these are symptoms. Digestion issues, it impacts anxiety to a certain level. It impacts your health. Trouble concentrating where you can't think straight, um, and symptoms of worry. And so, anxiety without boundaries, you feel overwhelmed, both physically and emotionally. And this is where, when you're feeling overwhelmed, you can be burnt out, where you're taking on too much, and you're having a hard time saying no, as which has been stated previously. We have to be able to take a stand, just like Alyssa was saying with her friend. You have to be able to say no and be able to set those boundaries. But if we don't do that, then we will be overwhelmed. We'll be physically overwhelmed. We'll be emotionally overwhelmed, where we don't really have a whole lot to give to care for ourselves. And boundaries is about that. It's about self-care. It's about caring for your well-being. Resentment and frustrations will come into our. We'll begin to feel that way because we're being taken advantage of, or we feel like we're being overlooked, which can lead to anger, bitterness, and so forth. Fear of intimacy. Um, Anxiety can creep up in that way as well, where we want um, intimacy, we want closeness with other people, but yet the anxiety comes to the point where we either overshare too much about our situations or what's going on in our lives. And then we back off or we don't back off. And after we've shared, now we feel like, okay, this person is going to judge me because of what I did share. And so there's mixed feelings there. So fear will come in and be able to operate in our lives as such. Self-neglect, feeling like your own needs are always last and you're struggling to identify them. Fear of setting boundaries. It brings, again, the anxiety, the fear of rejection, and disappointment. And pause, I can't see if hands raised or anything. If they are raised, just, you don't have to raise your hand. Just go ahead and speak up and I'll pause if you have anything.
I'll try to monitor it, Sharon, and
Okay.
I'll monitor the chat too.
Okay. Thank you. And so, anxiety with boundaries, when we have boundaries in place, and as we begin to work on our boundaries and begin to maintain them and sustain them, we will be able to begin to experience and see the reduction in stress in our lives, reducing the pressure on our mind. When we're very stressed out, as we said in the previous slide, that our minds begin to shut down to the point where we can't think straight. But if we're maintaining and holding on to those boundaries that we are setting in place, we'll see the reduction of stress, where our mind is not so overloaded, where we're now able to think more clearly. Feeling safe and respected, security. We'll feel more secure, we'll feel more safe because of those boundaries that we're putting in place. Um, but we have to make sure that those boundaries are clear and being made known to those that we're in relationship with. And the fact that they're respecting those things, will respect ourselves and we'll feel that sense of security that we're desiring. Increase self-esteem. We will sense that and see that in our life as well. We'll feel more confident and validated because of our needs, and not being validated by others, but being validated by what we know that we need in our lives, and that those needs are being met and heard by others. The energy, we'll have more energy where we can be able to do things for ourselves as well as do things for others. You know, there's a balance, it's a balancing act. And so we'll see the energy and we'll experience more energy. And then again, clarity, as I stated before, where we are able to be able to think clearly, but also have a better understanding of uh, what we will and won't allow in the boundaries that we set. And so having that in place is going to be very important for us as we move forward.
One of the notes in the chats was that we have to put our mental health first. That in different situations, anxiety will come up, but you just have to tell the person what you can't do and also what you can do too. But your mental health is the bottom line for this chat. Has to come first. You got to put your mental health first.
Absolutely. Thank you for those comments. So yes, for sure, there has to be a balance in an act. And as it was stated, you know, not just saying, okay, yeah, I can't do this, but you know, if you are able to offer, this is what I can do, this is within my realm to be able to help you and yet be able to sustain my well-being, then, you know, offer that to that person. Um, panic with boundaries. There is, I feel like this is not quite right. I may have missed something here. Um, Yes, it is. Okay, so panic with boundaries. There's rapid heartbeat, sweating, shaking, dizziness, anger, feelings of having a heart attack, all of these things, fear, anxiety, helplessness. And the asterisks indicate the fight or flight symptoms, as we are probably familiar with. Psychologists have recognized that there's a link between people pleasing and traumatic survivors with panic attacks. And as they assert their boundaries, they begin to experience these things, which can, again, bring the person into a place of panic. And I can definitely relate to that. I've found myself in certain situations where I've experienced these things. And so they are real, they do exist, and it does happen. But the thing is, we can be educated, and when these things are happening, what can we do? Which we will talk later on in the slides to come on what we can do to um, overcome those things. And so, uh, panic without boundaries, you will find yourself feeling powerless because you're not able to control um, things in your life and the choices that are being made. So there's a sense of powerlessness. Um, when you don't have those boundaries in place and panic is present, you're constantly in a place of pleasing others, which again brings on that anxiety, brings on that panic, because again, your focus is on pleasing them and you're sacrificing really your health and well-being. And so that's what's happening. You're overstepping those boundaries. You're taking on tasks that you can't really handle, but because you want to please that person, you're doing those things. And so that's what you will experience. That's what you will see. Um, the other point is Dr. Robert Townsend. That's a book that I have been reading, not reading, well, I've been reading, but also um, working along with my spouse in this particular book is talking about boundaries in marriage. And one of the things I thought was very pivotal that I believe can also cross over for singles as well, not necessarily for marriage people or couples, but also for singles. He said in this book that each spouse must take responsibility for seven things. They must take responsibility for their feelings, their attitudes, their behaviors, their choices, their limits, their desires, their thoughts, their values, their talents, and their love. And so I believe this is just across the boards, whether you're married or single. And so those are the things is what I've been working on, really trying to hone in, what I have ownership of and what I don't have ownership of, and then not feeling guilty um, when things are not within my power or my realm to have control over. And so um, that's something good to consider and to highlight and have in your pocket when you're setting your boundaries and looking at those areas. Internalizing anxiety and stress can build up over time that will cause chronic feelings of resentment and even exhaustion if we are not getting a handle on anxiety in our life. And so we have to be courageous. We have to stand up and we have to have courage to begin to address and express those things that are causing us negative emotions and causing us mental distresses. And so that's important. Sudden panic attacks can be triggered simply by someone asking a question or sharing a story of an experience that seems harmless, you would think on the surface, but it can trigger a past memory of discomfort. And so, again, being aware of the triggers that's within us and what's in others, and looking to see for ourselves when those triggers are happening, what can we do to cope in those times of distresses? And so the one thing that I wanted to share that I was searching was a grounding technique. It's called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I'm not sure, Pastor, I know you had mentioned a couple of those in the last class, but I'm not sure if the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 was one of them. But this is one that stuck out to me in my time of study and research. And so we can utilize this grounding technique where if we're finding ourselves in a mode of triggering, we're being triggered by something and anxiety is just off the chain, what can we do to get regrounded? What can we do to pull our focus back away from that panic and that anxiety? And so the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, it allows you to focus on your five senses to help you pull away from that panic, pull away from that anxiety. And then also I added, you can also utilize spiritual senses and not just the natural senses. So the natural senses is five, you would count to five and say, okay, name five things that you can see. Four, name four things that you can feel. Three, name three things that you can hear. Two, name two things that you can smell. And one, name one thing that you can taste. And so by counting that down and thinking on those things, will be able to calm your heart rate down, calm your mind down, and reassuring yourself, that you're okay in that instance. And so for the spiritual senses, if you wanted to use the technique, you can say, name five things that you see that you can see that God created. Name four things that you feel that God has provided for you. Name three things that you can hear God speaking to you or saying to you in that time, in that moment. Name two things that you can smell. And we are thinking about your spiritual senses. You can think about your times of your encounterments with God, your prayers, your worship. Our prayers are offered unto God like a golden bowl of incense. That's talked about in Revelations 5. And our worship is a harp of sympathy that's also considered a sweet smelling aroma, which we can also see in scripture, 2 Corinthians 2:15. And so we can begin to, again, use these things to help us get regrounded. when anxiety is kicking in or you're feeling yourself being triggered. And then lastly, number one, name one thing that you can taste in God's presence. When we're thinking about spiritual senses, taste and see that the Lord is good. Well, how is the Lord is good? Well, he's been faithful, even in my times of struggles, even in my times of, you fill in the blank. You can think about his promises. You can think about the fruit of the Spirit, how those things are that you can taste and you can experience. And again, to help you get recentered and to be able to get in a place of calm.
I have a question, Miss Sharon.
Yes.
So can you do that 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, give examples, not spiritually based examples?
Yeah, the first set was for natural senses. And so the first set where you can say what name five things that I can see or
Go back
name
to
four things
go
that I
back
can.
to the slide so she can see it.
Yeah, I don't know if I can do that.
Yeah,
I'm
the
trying to
next
figure.
one,
Oh,
the next
yeah,
one
I know
over.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I see my icons. I'm trying to move things around. So
Oh, okay. I see.
these are the natural ones that you can use. And then as you feel like you want to try the spiritual side, you can do that too. But either one would work.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
One of the things for those that are in spiritual warfare, when you go to the next one, if you smell sulfur, for example, you know that you're not dealing with something natural, you're dealing with something supernatural. So you have to change from a natural stance to a spiritual stance and begin to do spiritual warfare. Because, you know, if something is about to attack you, and we know about spiritual warfare, and that attack can be spiritual, that smelling and this senses could really be good for you to understand that it's not of this world. So not just think about this in the sense of God, but also think of this in a sense of being under spiritual attack. To use this 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, you know.
Good point.
So yeah.
Thank you.
And another thing about panic, be it natural or spiritual, dealing with this again with Paige over the years, teaching her what's your panic and what's somebody else's panic. Because panic can be in the atmosphere. If Paige walks in a room and it's panic, she'll start panicking. And so she had to start learning if it was hers or somebody else's. And so we have to understand, if you can tap into the atmosphere in a room and you walk in and you're feeling panicked and you're saying that it's you because you're in a room full of people and you've just tapped into a room with a bunch of panicky people, and now you're doing stuff because you think it's you. You have to learn the difference what's you and what's not, because the enemies has a boundary violation and getting you all riled up. And so you can take authority over those things. But you also do have trauma triggers too, which is a bit too much for this class, but there's those things too.
And so panic with boundaries.
Hold up, we have a hand, Sharon.
Okay.
Go ahead, Late.
I thought grounding was demonic all this time. They've been trying to get me to do it in these different classes I'm in. And I thought the origins were demonic. So,
Well,
has anybody else heard of this?
you want to answer that, Sharon?
I wasn't aware that they were, so I think it's probably the mindset in which you use it, but I will defer that to Pastor.
Well,
That would be my take on it.
when you're thinking about the word grounding, it really is focusing on whatever is true, whatever is, lovely, whatever is of good report, is to get you back down from that flight, fright, freeze mode and get you to a point where you can begin to use, instead of your back lobe to respond and begin to punch people or however you're going to respond, that you can actually use your front cerebral brain and your reasoning that's going to slow you down, so that you're actually using your front brain instead of your war brain that's in the back. Because when you get in anxiety, you get into that war brain or that fight, fright, freeze mode. You want to ground, or you want to change, or you want to take control of your frontal lobe so that you can use reasoning. It's a bee, and I'm ready to jump off a window because I'm allergic to bees. And that's my back, and I'm like, wait a minute, this bee's not going to kill me. I have to stop that thing in the back and focus, ground myself in truth. So that's how you can use that, Late. Okay. I don't see any more hands, Sharon.
So panic with boundaries, when you're dealing with panic and you do have boundaries in place, you still will experience certain negative feelings, if you will. One of the things, the initial panic may be present when you're setting a boundary. When it happens, it could be a person that has a history of avoiding confrontation. But as they begin, or as we begin to assert ourselves, the nervous system may panic for a moment because it's used to being silent to feel safe. This panic doesn't mean setting a boundary was wrong, but it means that the person is choosing a new healthy boundary that they're now than what they're accustomed to. So it's okay. You're gonna feel it. Just press through those feelings, and not feel like, oh, I shouldn't have set this boundary. No, follow through in the boundaries that we're setting for ourselves. Sometimes you may feel like you're being a villain. That may occur, and especially for women, we as women, those that are in marital relationships, about submitting to the husband and the husband submitting to the wife. And sometimes we can feel like we're the villain, or we're guilty of not doing, X, Y, Z. And so we may be uncomfortable, I think, as Pastor was saying, when we're developing new healthy behavior patterns. So there's going to be some uncomfortableness, and that's okay as we set these boundaries. Um, we will experience increased long-term peace as we again work with it, stick with it. We will see the positive outcome and results of setting those boundaries. We should see ourselves being more at peace, and feeling more calmer and freer in as we set those boundaries around us. And so, I think this is the last one. Healing from past trauma. Setting boundaries can be a therapeutic act for those that have dealt with trauma in their past, allowing them to address unresolved trauma due to abuse or control issues that they were dealing with in their past. Fear. Fear is another thing that's tied and linked to anxiety. Fear, it can motivate us, and it also can paralyze us. Oftentimes we find ourselves in a place where fear is paralyzing us, but we can also, when we're setting healthy boundaries or good boundaries, it can motivate us, it can wake us up, it can alert us. It can be used to protect us, for us to stay in a safe place, letting us know something is, that's just not right, that we need to be cautious and awakened to, so that we can ensure that those boundaries are not being violated. When fear is managed with clear boundaries, we some examples here of what that looks like is an example of a boundary that is proactive and empowering is when you have a boundary that you won't spend time with people that are disrespectful. If that's one of your boundaries, respect is an important thing, then you're not going to allow those persons in your space to be disrespectful to you. So, uh, your fear of being devalued guides you to say no to that person, just as Alyssa was saying, to the invitation, but it doesn't leave you in a place of being paralyzed or feeling even angry at that person. So again, the boundaries that we set will begin to work on our behalf, and we'll find ourselves being more empowered um, by putting those in place. An example of a boundary that's intentional and clearly communicated. This is an example when you say to the person that may be asking you a question, or you can say reply with a response that doesn't work for me, or no, I'm not available, without over explaining yourself or even feeling guilty. And I think we all probably can think back in a place where, we may have said no, and yet, but we go on and on and on trying to, explain why we said no. Sometimes no is just no, and be okay and not feel like you have to go into a very detailed explanation, so that that person is okay. Um, they have to, again, respect what your response is that you're giving to them and not feeling guilty about it. Um, this example, it shows a validation that does not come from others, but is coming from within yourself. And it leads to improved self-esteem. You're stronger, you're healthier, within yourself and within your relation, as honoring, you're honoring your own limits, as we were talking about earlier. And I'll pause. Any questions, comments?
I just have a comment that remember you're setting boundaries because you respect you and you tell people how you want them to respect you. When you don't have boundaries, when you're unbound, it tells people that I can do anything I want to you and you can't stop it. And we feel powerless, we feel afraid, and we feel fear because we believe they're right. But you're learning how to set boundaries because you're learning how to value you, your thoughts, your space, and everything else for the boundaries that we're going to set. It's just that you value you. That's what this is about. And having people show you the respect, honor, or whatever the things that you say you value, you're going to stand it because you value it. So that just keep that in mind when you're fearful about, oh, they might not like me. Well, how do you like yourself? Because they're doing this to you. How does that work for you?
Hmm.
Go ahead,
Yeah,
Latoya.
that's good.
Oh, I was just going to share that I had an experience like similar to this last night, and I didn't know what was happening, but I knew what to do. And I really like how it was clearly explained that when you make this boundary, um, that you're not over explaining it or feeling guilty. And I seen that the person I was having the conversation with was had an expectation. They felt like I owed them. And so they were trying to kind of manipulate the conversation into, if you don't reciprocate what I did for you many years ago, that I'm not going to deal with you anymore. And I just said, I see you have an expectation, and it was through text. I see you have an expectation, and I didn't go into why I didn't feel I owed them anything or anything like that, or all the things I ever did for them, or no games like that. I just said, God bless you. And no, I said something like blessings, and whatever I said, I blocked them, is what I'm trying to say. I was like, blessings, and God will restore, something like that, which was really hard for me to not say, man, I don't owe you nothing. In fact, you owe me, and go down the list and do all that. I was really looking to just not have any conflict. And I felt kind of felt kind of bad because I was just blocking them without an explanation. But I just felt like it was going spiral, it was going so downhill. And I just felt really disrespected that they felt entitled to me doing something for them. And I hadn't been around them for 2 years. And they felt like, oh, you owe me or something, that I just blocked them. And I felt like a grown up. And that's the best way that I could explain it. I felt good about it, and I think that explaining or feeling guilty thing was kind of conveyed what I was experiencing last night. But I did feel some regret that I didn't tell them why. But I just was like, oh, they'll figure it out. You know what I'm saying? I didn't want to get into a conflict. So thank you for that. Kind of describing it.
Okay, that's good. You're welcome. I think I see hand David.
Yeah, David and Shelley, you got two hands. David
Okay.
first.
Yeah, dealing with that no is pretty hard for me, especially with family, because they always at why you won't do it now. In my mind, I'm trying to teach you a lesson, but I got to go through all this stuff. And I love this because when it first came up in page sent it out, no, don't you don't have to answer no, but it's hard for me because I have done it so much. And you said it's like I done throw somebody off a bridge or something. But it's hard, and I like what Latae said because everybody act like I don't owe you nothing. I did what I did out of the kindness of my heart. It's just like this person texts me Monday. I know when they text me, they want something. You haven't heard from you in a year, and
Mm.
you texted me. But yeah, this is good for me because I struggle with that no sometimes because you want to help people so much, and then when you, yeah, I mean, you don't do what they want, then they want to act crazy. But thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Shelley.
Yeah, yeah, it's very hard, but
Yes, I love what David just said about the no and reiterating that. But also, Pastor was talking about how we need to start, honoring our own limits and how we respect ourselves, but then also telling people how to treat you. And when she was sharing that, what came to me is not only is it hard to learn to set our boundaries with people, but the ones that we've had no boundaries with, I feel like is even harder because how do you now go and change what has been boundaryless in the relationship to now setting that boundary?
yeah, I think it's just a matter of just, letting them know where you are and you're in that time and space of your life and what you're trying to do and accomplish. That you are, taking better care of yourself by doing these things so that you can have a well-balanced life. And so it's nothing against them. It's just something that you need to establish in place for yourself where you can be a better you and be able to still help people at a certain level.
And remember, guys, how people feel is a boundary violation. You can't control their feelings. What you're seeking to do is to control your thoughts, your responses, your reactions. But it's a boundary violation to say, if I tell them this, they'll be mad. Well, how do you know they'll be mad? That's a boundary violation. Just tell them what you're thinking. Don't be disrespectful when you're telling them and cussing them out and stuff like that. I'm not saying that. But when you're standing in yourself, you're learning to respect yourself. That's going to be the first step of learning boundaries and standing in conflict. Because right now, what you're doing is you're saying that the conflict within me is less valuable than the conflict that I might have with someone else. So I can already have a heart attack and be anxious and all the things that Sharon said that happens in your heart because how they feel is more important than me. That's what you're saying when you don't set these healthy boundaries. And I know no one's really saying that to themselves, but when you don't place conflict in the boundaries, that's what's actually happening without you actually speaking it. Latae has her hand up.
This was off of what Shelley had said, and it was also had to do with my experience last night. That when, let's just say to the extreme, someone was your pimp. This person was like my pimp. This is somebody that I was dealing with that I used to sell drugs for. I just want you to see the dynamics and how I was treated by them before to, I'm not that person anymore. You know what I'm saying? And so in my opinion, once you've been a like a subservient person to this person or somebody that domestically abused you, or like I said, I was working for this guy. You know what I'm saying? It seems like there's always this dynamic where they think that they're kind of above you, and you, because of them, you exist, or I can't explain it, but like they have something over you, like you owe them mentality. And it's like it couldn't be restored. It couldn't. Unfortunately, in this particular relationship, it couldn't be just a friendship and starting off on a clean slate like I wanted it to be, because we both love the Lord and everything. It's still this person coming back saying, "Oh, I remember when." So I'm gonna try it and see if she's gonna help me. I mean, they asked me in a matter of me being around them for one day. They asked me to introduce them to the CEO of the company I work for. They asked me for my vehicle. And I just, when they said that, I went silent. I didn't say anything. I was thinking, you lost your everlasting mind. But I didn't say it. I just said, oh, they're messed up in the head because they're saying unrealistic things. I've only met the CEO one time. Why would I do something like that? I was just thinking to myself how the dynamics are messed up in the thing. And if I don't really, like Shelly said, I don't really know how to kind of balance it out in the Lord and say, hey, I'm not that person anymore. I just showed it. I wasn't disrespectful. I just showed them love. I took them to breakfast. I was showing them kindness. And that was it. That was my last time seeing them. I just blocked them. But still, it's like they never see you as and they always belittle you, or they always see you as that low person. It's like you can't get from under that, and you just have to get away from them. That's how my ex sees me, and that's how that person sees me too. So I
I
just
feel
wanted to
like
say,
I
yeah.
feel like that kind of goes back to what my mom was saying, that's who cares how they see you. You respond and you act based off of your boundaries, regardless of how that person sees you. It, I mean, you can't shape what you do. They're going to see you how they want to see you, regardless of what you do. You can't stay true to them. You can't change how they see you, but you can change how you see yourself. I feel like that's how the saying no and standing firm in your boundaries helps, because it's not about the other person whatsoever at all. It's about you.
I like
Yes,
that, Amanda, because they're taking your identity.
Exactly. Exactly. And shaping it into something that who knows what.
you're getting it. That's good. No more hand sharing.
Yeah, so that's pretty kind of going back into what we're dealing with is the people pleasing. And so that piece has to be cut off where you're focusing on you versus the other person. Thank you for those comments. Um, where are we? Okay, so fear without boundaries. This is what it kind of looks like when fear is not managed by boundaries. It controls our choices, kind of like what we're already kind of saying, and leads to emotional distress and resentment. People pleasing. Saying yes to the request out of fear, disappointment of what the other person's going to say. So we're not going to say no because we want to say yes so we can please them, please what they want versus what we need. So we're suffering um, by saying yes. Um, so then there's a high reactivity or impulsivity in lashing out. We tend to you might lash out and you may shut down in those times. Even though you said yes, but you're really saying and screaming no in your spirit, but you're telling them yes. And so you could, begin to feel that where you're just angry on the inside because you're not standing up to your boundaries that you have. Well, you don't have any boundaries in this case, so you're just kind of dealing. Um, so building rigid walls, I think we talked about that. We don't, in our boundaries, we don't want to build walls that are rigid, but are flexible and that are healthy, because it's not to keep everybody out. It's just those ones that are toxic relationships or those relationships that are not healthy for your well-being. So you want to make sure, as Pastor's been teaching us and training us, to consider that as we're setting our boundaries, to look at those things. Um, Fear, it sounds like avoidance in this case without boundaries, that you can't deal with it right now. So I'm just going to avoid them. I've been in those situations where you just don't want to deal with it because you don't know how to deal with it. But now we're having the skills and the tools in which to do that. Um, there's self-betrayal. Again, the inner talking monologue that you're having, and you're having the resentment and the anger, again, compromising your own needs for the sake of others. And so that's not a healthy place to be in. The fear, it feels like being overwhelmed, again, resentment, and the inability to express our needs. And if we are not able to express our needs, it's going to lead to continued burnout and build up negative emotions on the inside of us. And so we have to really truly have those boundaries in place so we're not finding ourselves in what these descriptions of fear is saying to us. And so, in closing, strategies for setting boundaries. I think these have been covered in the previous classes, but we're going to continue to pound them in until we get them. Identifying the triggers, recognizing situations, people, thoughts that trigger anxiety within us, and understanding those triggers is going to be the first step to establishing good boundaries and limits in our life. Communicating clearly, being assertive, that's an area that I do struggle with and tend to continue to work on being more assertive in my communications with other people that I'm in relationships. So we have to be assertive in communicating our boundaries. And again, being able to say no and practicing it. Practice in saying that. You may have to do it before you even have a conversation with that person that you're dealing with, especially if it's one that you know is going to be difficult with. Begin to rehearse and think about, okay, how am I going to have this conversation with this person? Reassess. Regularly reassess your boundaries as they may need to be adjusted over time to stay within keeping of your current needs and your circumstances, because your needs may change over time. And so it's going to be good to revisit and reassess those. And so, the questions that you can think about, what are my current boundaries? Look at your current limitations that you have set in place. Are these limitations working out for you currently in your present situation? And then ask yourself, are you overextending yourself or being too rigid? How do you feel about your boundaries? It's about you. It's not about the other person, as it's been stated. Amanda was saying, how do you feel about your boundaries, and have you stayed within your boundaries, or have you ignored them to appease again others? And so we have to look at those things and be transparent in where we are. So then we'll know what we need to work on. And then lastly, speaking affirmation over yourself. I think that's so important. That's one of the things that I definitely use is just speaking affirmations over myself. Establish words of affirmation to help you maintain the boundaries that you set for yourself. It reinforces your self-worth, your confidence to dispel the voices and the thoughts of self-doubt, fear, worry, guilt, shame, whatever you fill the blank in. It helps reshape your thoughts. Setting your boundaries is not being selfish, but it's about self-care. Rebuild your emotional resilience, the ability to adapt and stay firm in maintaining those boundaries. Discomfort, as we talked about earlier, it's going to happen, it's going to come, but recognize that it's just temporal. You'll get through it as you continue to work and stay firm to the boundaries that you're establishing. And confidence will begin to come. And so, examples of affirmation: my needs are valid. It's okay to set boundaries. I did the right thing, even if I'm uncomfortable or it feels uncomfortable. And so, the next slide, this is just a thing that I pulled offline. You can go out there and you can find many others. I think it's a good thing to kind of set our own affirmations, begin to establish our own affirmations to what we know that we need to build ourselves and to sustain um, ourselves as we enforce the boundaries that we have set. Um, And this is just from a biblical view, using God's word to stand on in those times. With practice, prayer, and God's help, we can experience peace, we can experience security and freedom in establishing our boundaries and living a healthy lifestyle. John 14:26 and 27, it talks about Jesus, bring it that the comforter, that God would send the comforter for us. And so we're to utilize and pull on and lean on the Holy Spirit to help us in those times of setting those boundaries, because we see sometimes it's hard to pinpoint those things, as going back to what Paige was saying, that it took her, I think maybe days. It took me some time too. It takes a lot of time and effort to work through those boundaries and finding out what your values are, finding what your needs are. And it takes a lot of soul searching. And then, why not um, seek the Lord so he can begin to reveal those things that we may not necessarily see sometimes. And so these are just, I'm not going to go through sake of time. I'm sure we're probably over. Christian counselors have recommended affirmations as well. Um, this is just a few scriptures that you can put in developing your own affirmation statements to speak over yourself out loud, so it can get into your spirit, get into your heart. And here are some links as well. Hyperlinks, I believe they're live and hot. You can click on those for additional learnings. Um, and this is the thought that came to me that I wanted to share. Lastly, there's no relationship that's worth having if it destroys your mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual well-being. We have to keep that in mind as we're knowing that these boundaries are working on our behalf. And they are for us. And so, if you have a relationship that is destroying those areas in your life, is it really worth it? Is it really worth it? Um, and here's just another um, boundary that you can look at to see if that's something that fits you. If it does, print it out, put it on your mirror in your bathroom or wherever you spend most of your time, that you can kind of go over those things throughout your day or at the beginning of your day. Same thing here when you're questioning healthy boundaries. You're going to have those voices that's going to speak, oh, you probably shouldn't have put that boundary in place and it's not working, this and that, another. Again, reaffirm, speaking up for yourself, feeling safe to share your feelings, letting you know that setting these healthy boundaries are working for you and not against you. And so thank you for your time and attention, questions, thoughts. That concludes the teaching for tonight.
I think Tyra, if you want the questions, you can get them from Manda or I, or if you want to be put on the list, just let Manda or I know. We'll get you the test, the slides and everything. And Sharon, do send the slides to Paige and I, or just Paige, so she can send them out to people.
Will do.
I don't
All
know
right.
who's teaching next week, but you know who's teaching next week, so.
All right. So if there's no questions, yeah, I do know who's not teaching.
Do know who's not teaching.
So, Father, we thank you for our time. We thank you for what we have gleaned this evening as we have come together. We thank you for all the sharing of experiences, and thanking you for what you've allowed us to learn tonight, Father. And as we continue, we will continue to seek you and using the tools that has been afforded to us, that has been taught to us, Father, to begin to put them into action, Father, and trusting, God, that we can do all things through Christ who strengthens us. And that includes setting good, healthy boundaries, God, that will not only allow us to live healthy, but to be able to honor you in the midst of it all. And so we thank you tonight, Father. I pray sweet sleep upon each and every person tonight, and just protect us as we go our separate ways. In Jesus' name, amen.
The only thing I would say, Alyssa, if I need your email address to send you the slides. Tyra, I have your email address, so Alyssa, if you could, whose number do you, okay, thank you, it's in the chat, thank you. So we'll make sure Paige gets your email address, and we'll send you those slides. And Tyra, we will add you to the list so that you get the slides also and the recording. Okay, thanks to
All right.
everyone.
All right. Thank
Thank
you.
Blessings.
you
Take
Good
care.
all.
night.
Love you all.
Love you too. Bye.